Front wheel drive. Some people think of that as wrong wheel drive. To those people, I would say you need to drive one of these. This duo are as extreme as any Porsche RS or Ferrari Speciale, and they're not just two of the ultimate hot hatches, but two of the greatest cars ever, regardless of which wheels are doing the driving.
It is so lovely to be back in the Megane R26R. I absolutely adore this car. I remember the first time I saw one in 2008, and it was just extraordinary at the time, and it sort of still is now really. It's the GT3 RS of hot hatches.
Some cars aren't simply about power, they're about a philosophy. Look up the figures and you'll see that this very special Megane R26R puts out 227 brake horsepower and 229 pounds-foot of torque, achieving a 0-60 time of 6 seconds and a top speed of 147 miles an hour. So what, you might think? Even the curb weight of 1,220 kilos doesn't tell the whole story. What you need to know is that this weighs 123 kilos less than the regular Megane R26. A carbon fibre bonnet that opens without gas struts to reveal a naked engine devoid of fripperous plastic trim. There are no rear seats. Instead, the big void in the back of this car, number 001, has an optional bright red climbing frame of a roll cage. Strap your carry to that on a Friday night. Everyone loves prodding the plastic rear windows, but few notice the deletion of the front washers, and no one sees the missing sound deadening. The lack of a radio and aircon inside can feel a little more apparent on long journeys, but when you're just driving, you couldn't care less. The way the steering wriggles with information from the sticky, once warm R888 tyres, the confidence it inspires to lean hard and deep into the Brembo brakes, the eagerness, the rawness, the poise, it all combines to feel like the R26R would make a competitive tarmac rally car straight out of the box.
It always takes a moment or two to recalibrate when you get back in, because the limb slip diff in this car, which is one of the big things about it, makes such a difference. If you haven't driven a car like this before, then the way you can get on the power so early in the corner it's mind-blowing for a front-wheel drive car. Of course, they famously softened the dampers for the R26R so that the wheels stayed in contact with the ground slightly better over the notoriously bumpy Nürburgring and its curbs. I have to say, even the Nürburgring looks like Silverstone compared to this Peak District road though. It's so bumpy. Still copes though. I actually lived with one of these cars for a while, and although it was a bit of a faff on occasion because of the obvious sort of things that it took away, like radio and things like that, it was always worth it every day once you got buckled into this car. Locked into these Sabel bucket seats, clamped in really hard, is a fantastic feeling. You really do feel like you're just part of the car. Of course, not everything's brilliant about the car. I mean, the noise is, well, it's sort of Darth Vader on a particularly asthmatic day, and although it's got the titanium exhaust, you know, it's distinctive, but not exactly musical.
The gear shift is also a little stringy, but although it's not the most precise, at least it's not obstructive, so you can rush the changes through really quickly.
I never quite understood why they put Alcantara on the bit of the wheel that you don't actually ever touch, but there we go. In the 8 or so years since this was launched, many other hot hatches have come and gone, others have taken its Nürburgring lap time, but to be honest, I was starting to think that it would never really be beaten. However, now, there is one car that I think might just topple its crown.
The Golf GTI Clubsport S might not look that wild, but under the skin is some serious hardware. The EA 888 engine is now stronger even than the one in the Golf R. The adjustable suspension and diff have both been given an extra race mode. Like the Renault, the Clubsport S has been on a seat diet too, although slightly deflatingly it only weighs 15 kilos less than a normal Clubsport, Kilo saving, however, is the reason for all 400 Clubsport S's coming with a manual rather than a DSG box. There's even some genuine downforce, thanks mostly to that rather sleek rear wing. And the whole car has been honed by a chassis magician called Carsten Schebstadt. Don't know the name? Well, you'll know the cars he's been responsible for in the past. Things like the groundbreaking Mark I Focus, the genre-reinvigorating Mark V GTI, and the brilliant 997 Gen 2 Porsche GT3. It has all added up to a stunning road car and a record-breaking Nürburgring Nordschleife lap time of 7 minutes and 47 seconds. Of course, typically, since we filmed this, the new Honda Civic Type R has gone even quicker than the Golf, but that's a car for another day.
It seems crazy to think that in just 8 years, this car has managed to go a full 30 seconds quicker than that Megane R26R. Most of it is obviously down to the increased power. We're now up to 306 brake horsepower in this car, and 280 pounds-foot of torque. But the suspension as well does feel just that bit more polished than the old Megane. Compared to the Megane, you probably think that the Golf really, isn't trying hard enough. I mean, I know there are no back seats back there, but all the windows are made of glass, and I've got a normal seatbelt here, and sort of these buckets are sort of basically comfy and sort of nothing like as grippy as the Sabot ones in the Megane. But for VW, this is the equivalent of basically stripping off your three-piece suit, shaving your head, and piercing your nipples. Unlike the Megane, you can adjust the suspension on this, and the damping is just unbelievable. We're back on this extremely bumpy stretch of road again, and even more so than the Megane, it just deals with what it throws at it. We've also got this incredibly sophisticated diff in the front axle, which I'm surprised VW hasn't really trumpeted more, because it's just brilliant. It's not as aggressive perhaps as one in the Megane, but the way it bleeds in and out and ramps up and down is really, really clever.
The Renault has a helical type limited slip diff made by GKN, and it's brilliant, redirecting torque to the loaded outside wheel, locking the nose onto a tighter line, and dragging you out of corners with a tenacity that astounds if you haven't felt it before. The VW essentially weaves exactly the same grip hunting sorcery, but with more finesse, using clutch packs to administer the torque. Think of it as like the clever E-diff on a Ferrari, but on a front-wheel drive car.
It is an absolutely filthy day up here in the Peak District, it really is. It keeps blowing in with wind and rain, but it's still very beautiful. Something the Clubsport S has certainly got over the R26R is noise. It's just... that's a proper four-cylinder noise. There's a bit of Subaru in there, like the Golf R had as well. It really does sound very good indeed. Like the Megane, we've got Alcantara on the wheel, all the way around this time. I think I've worked out what it is in the Megane. Perhaps it's why some people think you have this red thing up here. It's so you can mark it when you're driving like that. Makes sense now. One of the other things you think might have progressed in the sort of the 8 years in between is that you would expect this to have a double clutch gearbox with some paddles on the back of the wheel. But I'm so pleased that VW has chosen to stick with a 6-speed manual. I don't care what anyone says, it is just more involving. It really is. It makes it a proper driver's car. The Clubsport S certainly isn't as raw as the R26R, and to that extent I suppose the Renault, perhaps it always will have the edge, but this, I think the breadth of ability in this car is just incredible. I love the damping, I love the sound. It's a car I'd love to own.
The Golf feels stunningly fast across the ground, the engine is phenomenally strong, and the composure of the damping is bewitching. Some don't see the need for this breed of extreme, scaldingly hot hatches, but I think it's brilliant having a healthy dose of RS or Speciale at this price point. On the road, particularly these roads, there is an argument to say that you don't need, or perhaps can't even use, any more performance than this. Such is their brilliance that they even question the need for all-wheel drive. But that's a film for another day.